In my last video, I talked about radical self-care. And in this video, I want to talk about radical self-acceptance. So radical self-care is the idea that you should treat yourself with the same loving kindness and care that you treat others. Radical self-acceptance is the idea that there is absolutely nothing wrong with you. Yes, nothing about you needs to be fixed, and absolutely nothing about you needs to change. So all you have to do is accept yourself exactly where you're at with affection, humor, and good grace. Now, this is radical because entire industries have sprung up around our sense of self-deficiency. The self-improvement industry alone is worth $11 billion because it is so good at convincing you that you lack something and you'd help to overcome your problems. It has convinced us that everything in our lives that's not perfect is a problem to be solved. So if you're not swimming in a pool of money, looking half your age and happily married to a successful man, then you've got work to do. So no wonder we see a massive problems when we look at our lives. We see all the ways in which we fall short of perfection. And of course, social media makes us even more conscious of all of our problems because it parades everyone else's perfect life and makes ours feel hopelessly messed up by comparison. But here's the thing. The pleasure principle teaches us that we can either focus on fixing all of the things that are going wrong, or we can seek out the things that we like best. Now, both paths will get us moving forward, but only one will bring us joy. And I'll bet you can guess which one. Hi, I'm Amy Waterman. I'm the author of The Pleasure Principle and a love expert here at yourbrilliance.com. And if you are in need of a pep talk, or if you feel down on yourself for whatever reason, or you cannot figure out what you're doing wrong in life, then you're in the right place. Keep watching. If radical self-care is super fuel for attracting love, then radical self-acceptance is the sweetness that helps you enjoy it. So it is really hard to enjoy life when you don't feel like you're good enough, or you feel like other people are judging you, or you judge yourself even more harshly. And it seems impossible to even imagine a world in which all of those things that you think are problems about yourself aren't actually problems at all. Now, this is what unconditional love was supposed to teach us. So in an ideal world, we would be loved so unconditionally as children that we would know we are worthy and beloved, regardless of any mistakes we might make. But so many of us didn't get that message. Instead, we got the message that love had to be earned. And we only got love if we did what other people wanted us to do. We only got love if we made ourselves into what other people wanted us to be. And so many of us ended up concluding that something was really wrong or broken within us. It felt like everyone else knew exactly what to do. They didn't struggle. Success happened naturally for them. So clearly they had something we didn't. So that belief that there is something fundamentally wrong about us is very useful to other people because it makes us easy to control, right? All somebody has to do is convince us that there's a right way to do things. And we would all rather be right than wrong. And so we do exactly what they say. We try our best to do it right. And we are so convinced that if we just manage to get it right, we will get rewarded with love and approval and appreciation. Now that feels like the way the world works, but it isn't. Women have been controlled for much of human history through their love lives. We have been threatened with this idea that we will be unmarriageable if we don't behave properly. Now, I am so grateful to be living in the 21st century where we don't have to behave. We don't have to convince a man that we can cook and clean and budget before he will consider marrying us. We have this extraordinary freedom of being able to live our lives and make our own choices about who and when and how to love. And yet, so many women don't feel free. They still feel that threat of being unmarriageable. They feel worried that they're not ever going to find someone. They feel like they don't have any power. They feel like it's a man's world and they have to be grateful for any kind of male interest rather than being too picky. And every rejection and every bad date reinforces that belief that there's something wrong about them that's wrong or broken or not good enough. Because if they were good enough, then surely they would have met somebody by now. Now, if it were up to me, I would prescribe a daily diet of radical self-care and radical self-acceptance. But most women don't try that. Instead, they conclude that what they need is an expert to tell them what to do, because clearly they don't know how to do it right. They need rules to follow. They need a plan that can't fail. And so they go looking and they come across the typical internet dating advice, which goes something like this. If you want a man, then you've got to do X, Y, and Z. You've got to make yourself look more attractive because look at you, right? You've got to learn what men like because right now you're putting them off. You've got to cater to men's fantasies and men's desires, and you've got to do all of this so well and so effortlessly that he would never guess you're not like this naturally. And so we're straight back to the 1950s when women were warned away from anything that might make them unmarriageable. So have you fallen for this? How many of you think it's your fault that you're still single? How many of you think that it's because you're not attractive enough? How many of you worry constantly that you're going to make some mistake that's going to put him off? Well, if so, then you have been sold the deficiency model of dating. And I made up this term to describe dating advice that's predicated on the belief that you need to fix yourself before a man could possibly find you attractive. And it's a very lucrative business model because if you think you're deficient, then you will spend so much money trying to fix yourself. You will put your entire love life in other people's hands because obviously they know better than you do. But there is another way, a way that for some of you might be even harder. It involves accepting yourself exactly as you are and knowing that you are lovable no matter what you do. Now, what's crazy is that hardly any of the women I know who are in happy, healthy, and loving relationships had to fix themselves before meeting their husbands. They were just living life, hanging out, being themselves when they ran into this great guy, and the rest was history. Real life doesn't happen the way dating advice says it should happen. In real life, people fall for each other because they like each other. They fall for each other because they work together or they study together or they go to the same church. They fall for each other because it just makes sense. In real life, a relationship is not a reward for getting it right. In real life, a relationship emerges when you spend a lot of time with somebody. You find out that you have this fun connection and you just want to explore that further. The secret to love in real life is to show up feeling good about yourself and open to possibilities and spend as much time as you can with other people. But in dating advice world, the quote unquote secret is supposedly learning as much as you can about men and making yourself as attractive as possible and performing so well that he can't resist your charms. Brene Brown talks about proving, pleasing, perfecting, and performing as ways that we hustle for worthiness. And most dating advice is about proving, pleasing, perfecting, and performing. So if you're trying to prove yourself to a guy, if you are trying to please him, if you're trying to do it all perfectly, if you're trying to perform for him, then you're trying to win his approval so that you will feel worthy, and that's going to shoot you in the foot. Louise L. Hay often said that people came to her with all sorts of problems, financial problems, health problems, relationship problems, but she always only taught them just one thing: to love themselves. She wrote, quote, "If you do not love yourself totally, wholly, and fully, then somewhere along the way, you learn not to. You can unlearn it. Start being kind to yourself now." So how would life feel different if you knew that you were fundamentally okay exactly as you are? If you didn't need to fix anything about yourself or change anything about yourself? If you just smiled and shrugged when somebody pointed out your mistakes and your flaws and your problems? You know, it's okay, right? This is life. None of us are perfect. You are who you are because of the life you've lived. Even those parts that you feel are flawed are valuable. And if it's hard for you to believe that, then find a great therapist. But in the meantime, if somebody doesn't like who you are, well, that's on them, because nobody can take your worthiness away from you. When you radically accept yourself, you do not waste time with people who don't accept you. You're on the lookout for your tribe, for your people, for the folks who get you. Now, it goes against popular wisdom to stop wasting time trying to be more like what men want. But what better way could you spend your life than being more yourself and pursuing what pleases you and saying no to what doesn't? That's why I wrote The Pleasure Principle. It's love advice for folks who don't want to be controlled or told what to do. It's love advice that inspires you to practice self-acceptance and self-care as a path to attracting a truly great love. So check it out. I'll put the link below. Take really good care of yourself, and I will see you next time.